Welcome to the Code for Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and code for. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cindy Doyle, author of Hold the Line and My Wife.
Welcome back to Code for Couples. Today, I have Adam Hadiary on, who is going to talk to us about fitness. He has an app that you may be interested in and a company that is Effective Fitness. So we're going to talk something about that, but let me give you a little bit of info about him. He spent 7 years in law enforcement, 2 of which he was a full-time sergeant, and he is the founder and CEO of Police Posts, which is the largest platform out there on Instagram for police to learn about different situations. I went and checked out some of that, and I was trying to figure out what it was, but I was getting it. We're taking these situations, looking at it, seeing how we can learn from it, which I think is a great way of incorporating resiliency as well. But we'll get to that in a minute. So taking those real world incidences and making them applicable and learning from them. He is also the founder and CEO of Effective Fitness Training, which is a science and data-driven fitness program that specializes in developing more effective and prepared police officers. He recently has also started Effective Fitness Combatives, where his team specializes in providing education and solutions for law enforcement officers through proven science-driven fitness and combatives. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to this. In going into the new year, a lot of people are focused on fitness. And so I think this was really appropriate timing and topic to talk about all this.
Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you for that intro. I don't think I've ever been introduced that way, so I will take it. But yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Now, I know you were in law enforcement for 7 years and moved out of it for some reason or another. And I was just curious about that. Can you tell us a little bit about the choice that you made? And was there something that impacted you physically or emotionally to make that choice?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started, obviously, my law enforcement career very young. I was 23, 24 years old. So I only had a very short stint within law enforcement. I know 7 years, I was like, oh, it's not that much time. You'd be right. It's not that much time, really, relatively speaking, compared to guys that have 20 plus years. But in those 7 years, I learned a lot. And my transition out was based off of a few things. One was I started a company, Effective Fitness Training, and that was starting to take off and required a little more attention. I was building a family that obviously somewhat played a role in that. And we had a change of leadership within the agency that directly affected me and my possible progress in my career path there. So there were multiple factors that really played a role there in my decision to leave. And I don't regret it. My best way to describe how I feel is I miss the clowns, not the circus.
Oh my gosh, I love that. My husband retired, and he will tell people there are aspects that he really misses and then just things that he does not.
100%.
It's also not uncommon. I'm hearing this among other entrepreneurs that have been or are in law enforcement, that there's a tipping point where you have to decide what makes more sense for me to invest my energy in. And it's not because of a negative aspect of law enforcement so much as it is like, it just makes more sense for you to do this other aspect. And so you found out that it made more sense for you to move into the fitness and continue to build upon that company, which is continuing to impact people that you really care about, which is law enforcement officers and their families.
I did have an issue leaving, and it was because I thought that was who I was. That was my identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to continue to help law enforcement. I have a great respect for the profession, those that continue to serve and protect me and my family. I'm very grateful for them, right? And so I saw some of the deficiencies within the profession that needed adjusting and needed a boost, and training above the standard was always something that I always believed in. And that's what founded the companies that are now progressing today. And now we have over almost 25, 28 coaches, individuals on between both companies. And so it's really good to see they're also making an impact as well. So that was also kind of the motivation side as well too, is we want to keep impacting the world and leaving it a better place when we leave. It's always a good motto.
Where did you said you saw some deficiencies. What were some of the deficiencies that you saw with fitness and law enforcement?
Correct. So it wasn't necessarily fitness at first. It was more just overall health and wellness and just awareness of what was going on, body types. It's not to stereotype people by the way they look, but you can usually tell someone's capability based off of their appearance, right? Because the first level of use of force is officer presence. So if your presence is somewhat of a soup sandwich, then, the other levels of force are probably going to be around that same level. Okay. So we take that, and I was tasked with developing a program to help maybe combat some of these deficiencies and shortcomings we were seeing with our officers. So I decided to dive into the data and the research there's plenty out there on law enforcement, first responders, and present it to my command staff. Some of them were all about it. Some of them were not. It ended up getting shut down or just pushed to the side, which was a little aggravating because I spent a lot of time on it. And so that's where I said, I just developed a business plan here. And it wasn't obviously as complex as it is now, but it was a good foundation to build what we have. Basically, overall officer ability, officer wellness, and then officer education was a big one. Some of them just don't know, like you don't know what you don't know, right? So when it comes to nutrition or fitness or how to work out or what you should be doing, or what are the repercussions of not doing something, those are some things that I thought were extremely important. So obviously being able to provide a resource is huge. That's was the foundation.
And that makes so much sense to me. One of the primary components when you're mentioning data, officers are always all about data for sure. So when we're mentioning data, one of the data points that I think of is cortisol dumps, right? So everything that happens as a part of hypervigilance, that cortisol gets activated, and that's why officers have high blood pressure. That's why they have high cholesterol. Nobody as a spouse, and also my husband as an officer, like nobody told us that there was a connection between cortisol and high cholesterol. Like, no, I had to go into research to figure that out and find that out. What are some of the data points or these education points that you think officers miss out on, and spouses? Because we do this as a team, right? So spouses are also impacted as well. So we have to look at our physical health, emotional and mental health too, physical health. So what are some of the data points that people miss, what are some of the data points that people miss?
One of probably the most popular phrase that I use, I wouldn't say it's popular to me because I use it the most, but the biggest threat to law enforcement is law enforcement itself. So the profession alone is the issue itself, is the long hours, the lack of nutrition, the lack of education, the lack of resources, the lack of support from command staff or whatever the case may be. So the data points we looked at, I straight up looked at, obviously there's a lot of studies on BMI. There's a lot of studies on acute injuries as it pertains to the joints and how to combat these things. And so I took, just from a purely functional standpoint, not objectively looking at the data and saying, okay, we know these are problems. Let's create solutions to now solve these problems. Okay. Obviously, as it pertains to the nutrition side, which I think is probably the biggest factor, that's more of a behavior change, right? That's not, yes, you can say, I know I need to eat protein. I know I need to not eat too much sugar, but that's a behavior change, right? And that behavior change, the best way to get behavior change is to have support, right? So if you have support at home, if you and your wife are doing meal prep together, you guys are starting to cook together, or you eat the same times together, that's going to really help drive those factors home. So if you know you need to eat better and you just do it when you come home and maybe your wife's eating a bowl of cereal, or maybe she's eating something else and you're over here eating chicken with broccoli and whatever the case may be. If you do things together, that's really going to help. One, you're going to start to see change in each other's bodies. So obviously your mood, your sleep's going to get better. So these things are going to directly impact your relationship. And I think that's where, again, it's a whole holistic approach to fitness. Yes, the working out and the protein, all that stuff is great, but you got to fuel yourself the right way. Like the cortisol stuff you talk about, is something that's so under discussed in this profession. I actually just got out of an ice bath prior to doing this. I've become addicted to ice baths. So that's my new thing. I say new.
Okay.
I've been doing it for a while, but
Mhm.
that's really helped, obviously, with dopamine production and stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Huberman and his research on deliberate heat and cold exposures. So we try to give them tools and resources to say, hey, you guys, just like you said, you had to do the research yourself to find this stuff out, which
Mhm.
is just
Mhm.
incredible, because you go to doctors and they take your blood and they tell you
Mhm.
all this stuff, yet they don't tell you things that you really need to know. And then I think that's important. So I think it is a team effort as it pertains to, if you really want to create change in your life, yes, you can do it yourself, but it makes it a lot easier when you have somebody else there with you.
I think if you're listening, you can't see how big I was smiling just a minute ago when Adam was talking, and how vigorously my head was nodding when he was talking about the together aspect of this, because I want to ask you about something later. But your quote that you're using is very similar to what I say, which one of the statements I make on a regular basis is what keeps an officer safe on the job can negatively impact and spill over into his relationship or their relationship. And it's the same kind of thing, that it's the career and the conditioning that comes from it, and the impact from what officers do on a daily basis that spills over, not just there, but for hours, days, years, decades, and impacts physically, mentally, them and their spouses. So I love that you were saying together. And here's why. I have several spouses that have reached out to me, and their complaint has been that their officer has become very, I'm going to say, vigilant about working out, to the point where working out is the first thing that they think of. They go, they work out, they do their hour and a half routine, then they come home and they have to have their special diet, so they're cooking for themselves, but the everybody else in the rest of the family is having some other kind of meal. And it's become a lot, there's been a lot of resentment, because the spouse is, I wish I could have an hour off to go work out and just have my special meals. So it winds up being a real problem in the relationship. And I wouldn't point this out if it was just like one or two people. It's a whole conversation among spouses, and it's come into my therapy room. In fact, I have two in my therapy room right now where this routine needs to be honored, but at the same time, it's causing a lot of conflict. So, where do officers or couples go wrong? What do you see that goes wrong? How does it go to the left? And then we can even, I don't want to get too far into this, but even taking medication or testosterone, like it can become a whole routine that really can be disruptive.
Yeah, I have had a very similar issue with me and my wife. So she is not, obviously not like anti working out, but I own a fitness company. Excuse me. I train a lot. I train, not only do I train my fitness, but I also train jujitsu. I probably train jujitsu more than I do my fitness. As it pertains to the eating, I'm very aware of how much protein I have throughout the day. I sometimes have to ask her, hey, have you had any protein today? And she'll, no. It's like, well, you should probably do that. And it's not like I'm saying, hey, you should do that. I'm just saying, hey, I want you to be healthy. I want you to, obviously, omega 3s, eggs are a great source of that. Why don't you have some eggs in the morning as opposed to having a bowl of cereal? Right. And that can be different. And that's where that can lead to much bigger issues if not addressed. Me and my wife have a great relationship. We seem to coexist. We actually are complete opposites, which is one reason why it works sometimes. But to make it work, I don't really have an answer for that. I can just say that communication is super important, and cops are terrible at doing that. They like to shut down, they like to internalize
Yeah.
things, they like to keep things to themselves. I'm still guilty of that, but it's not a saying you can't find common ground or you can't find something you guys can do together, because I think together is what's important. And social media sometimes put people in some type of like dream world, or where they think there's something better out there, which can then obviously lead to other issues. And I think communication is so important. And then understanding what the person wants and what their needs are is extremely important. So if you can find something that you guys can do together, I think that's obviously the best thing to do. Like me and my wife, we love to hike. Like we used to go prior to kids, we used to go all over the country and hike. And then obviously once kids happened and starting two companies takes a lot of time. Obviously we haven't been on as many hikes as possible. And that was something we love to do together. And so now we're trying to find other things we like to do together and still explore that. And that's the thing is you can always still explore and still communicate, but that's also where we're working on as well.
You said I think on the website, maybe read it or maybe you wrote it to me, but you said that it's important to set aside time to improve your health. So it can positively impact your home life and how you treat your family. What did that statement mean to you? How do we do that?
So I feel as if, and this is not to get into the toxic masculinity phase, but as a man, I feel like I need to be able to protect. I want my kids to
I
look up to me as a strong person. So that's
so I think let me address that right off. So
sure.
I don't see it as toxic masculinity. I don't think most of us
Okay.
would. Because here's the thing is that most of us understand that if we're married to a law enforcement officer or we're in a relationship with an officer, that there is an aspect of protection that comes with it, whether they're male or female, like they're there to protect. And by golly, that I hope that is integrated into my officers so they can be safe on the job. So it's not toxic. It's just
Okay.
part of who you are. So please let's take that out. So
Okay.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
Just some people react differently and I'm not trying to offend anybody. Yeah. So that's also how I see it is not only being physically strong, but I do feel as if that's why training, I believe, is so important because what does training do, right? It also helps us reduce stress. Okay. And stress obviously is it can be a very good thing. There's good stress and then there's bad stress. As it pertains to law enforcement, this stress can occur from many different venues. It can come from interpersonal relationships. It can come from a critical incident. Either or,
It could
you
come
have
from
to
administration,
yeah, that's why the biggest threat to law enforcement
right?
is law enforcement
Yes.
itself. As it pertains to training, this is why we harp on high level training so much, is because high level training can reduce stress. And that stress obviously is in, of course, we have a cup full of water, and every time there's stress, like the water keeps getting added, and all of a sudden the cup overflows. So if we can keep that, there's always going to be water in a cup, right? But we always want to try to keep it at a decent level to where there's no point of it overflowing. And how do we regulate that? That's obviously everybody's different, but I do believe that higher level training as it pertains to whether that's nutrition, whether that's fitness, whether that's combatives training, whether that's communication, super important, right? So that's our approach to the higher level fitness, higher level training is because I directly feel as if that'll reduce stress and making someone feel more prepared for the profession will then impact them as a person.
So I'm writing down little notes
Sure.
about what you're saying because I'm looking at this for you're mentioning communication. And when we are looking at integrating the time to take care of an officer's physical health or even a spouse's physical health, you're making some good points. First of all, you said it reduces stress. The fact that it makes somebody who's more prepared. You mentioned joints, and I smirked about that because several years ago, my husband had to have a hip replacement on the left-hand side because that continual swinging of the leg out the door over and over again impacted his hip. And I know like his knees sometimes, like he's had to build that up, that muscle strength. So you're talking about not just stress, but being more prepared, but then also the aspect of longevity as well, right?
Yes.
Because if we protect joints, if we take care of our physical body, then after retirement, I'm going to be able to enjoy my officer more and they are going to be able to enjoy life more. And so one of the aspects that I really talk about from my lens is, hey, don't let the job dictate your relationship. In essence, you're saying the same thing. Don't let the job dictate your physical ability. Take charge of your own physical ability, whether it's the stress or your joints or being able to protect yourself or your family. there's some real speaking points here. So I'm looking at this of how do you have that conversation and that communication, right? Because you said it was so helpful. And how do we get on the same page to have common goals where it can be a together type of conversation that as a couple, it really benefits us to make sure that our officer takes the time to integrate the fitness component to this.
So I'm going to address a few key points you said there. So the joint thing, yes, joints, shoulders, knees, and lower back. The data shows that the shoulders, knees, and lower back are the most likely to become injured or strained or cause some type of pain, right? Shoulders, I believe, are the highest, and then next is knees, then lower back. And obviously your hips are greatly affected by your lower back.
Check, and check for
Correct.
my officer.
Yeah. Same.
All
Same.
of those.
Same, unfortunately. But again, this is why we try to build resiliency in those areas. And we can focus on that with a program. Okay. As it pertains to the job itself, I, over the years, have realized that it is a job. It is a job. And some people will say to their spouse, or some people will say to other people, you won't understand because you've never been a cop. You don't get it. Right. They're people too, right? And they're made up of the same parts for the most part. We all have the same brain, same eyes, same ears, all that good stuff. And I try to tell people, at least from my aspect of it, is it's a job. Okay. And then when you leave this job, the job doesn't care about you anymore. That's a super hard thing to take in, right? Law enforcement is I wouldn't even say it's a fine oiled machine, but it's a machine. And when you leave or something breaks on that machine, my job, my position as training sergeant was replaced before I even officially left.
Yeah.
And then after I left, out of close to 400 officers, maybe 4 still talk to me. 4 out of 400. Okay. Now I've gained more support outside because obviously people support other like-minded people. And so that's where we gain a lot of the support from other like-minded people. And those are the people that I want to surround myself with and help push, but also the people who maybe aren't like-minded. Maybe we can show them the light. That's where the difference is. Hey, maybe look at it from this avenue, as opposed to saying, you don't understand, or you weren't there. Okay, you're right. Maybe I wasn't there, but let's talk about it. Why do you feel this way? And that's where I've had friends come over to my house after critical incidences to discuss certain things because they just wanted to talk. I will be absolutely quiet and you can talk all you want, brother. Or whatever the case may be. And then we try to address issues as they come up. Objectively looking at things is always super important. And that's sometimes very difficult for people to self-assess and look objectively. And I try to push those two things as one, how to even properly self-assess, and then how to truly look objectively at a situation and then take action or make a plan based off of what you've picked up from that self-assessment.
Yeah, that self-assessment part is so important. And many times taking that time to self-assess, it's the time, but then also being able to be willing to do a honest self-assessment about that. And we could have a whole different conversation about that for sure. So when you're moving people, I love that you said, show them the light. And that made me think about probably a different angle of things, but I'm going to go here. Sure. So when you have somebody who does not do anything physical now, how do you show them the light on wellness, whether that's through education or whether that's through getting them physically active? What would you say to them as far as getting them moving from that magic chair, as Gil Martin would say, into something that could be helpful for them?
So I think most people have a baseline of common sense as it pertains to health and wellness. They know what's good for them, even though they may smoke cigarettes, they may drink soda or pop or whatever people call it, depending on what part of the country you're from.
We call it Cokes.
Coke. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Go. Yeah. Same here. And they know, but they still do these things anyways. They eat fried foods all the time. People overeat. Welcome to America. And that's okay that they do those things because that's their right as an American, right? I may not agree, but that's their right. So how do we try to get a behavior change? One way I try to do it is, obviously motivation is short-lived. Okay. And you'll hear this, and people lately, probably as of like the past year, have been talking a lot of crap about motivation. Oh, motivation's temporary. You need discipline. Okay. I agree with that statement, but I would also
Okay,
say
yeah, I
that,
can go with that.
sure. But I would also say that motivation, even though it's short lived, can still be beneficial. You may have different means of motivation. I know I do. My motivation changes every day. Okay. Now, obviously, I have long term motivation and long term disciplines. When you can do the obvious, do it for your family, do it for your coworkers, do it for your job, do it for you. That's always important. But I think the bigger picture is really you have to take the time to sit down with somebody and really show them the bigger picture. You can maybe do it through like an Instagram post or all this stuff, but when you sit down with them and say, hey, your health and wellness isn't just you feeling bad. It's going to impact your finances when you get older. It's going to impact your, the relationship you have maybe with your grandkids or your kids currently. It's going to impact when you retire at 55 or 60. It's going to impact you wanting to enjoy your life. That's why I always try to tell guys and girls, if you have the means of additional income or starting a business, I always recommend law enforcement officers do that. Always have a plan B, plan C, always have options, guys. It's always, you got to build that stability for yourself, because your agency it's the government. They're not going to do it for you. Okay.
Mhm,
You have to
mhm.
take care of yourself. And that's where, if you put it into different perspectives, obviously everyone's different. Everybody has different key triggers, right? They have different keywords they pick up on. So if you can talk to somebody for 5 minutes, you can figure out whether you have to go the kid route, the retirement route, the government route. And then you can then really harp on those to show them the way and show them light, to say, hey, look, here are resources that are available for you to gather more information, because you smoking cigarettes, even if it's one a day or two a day, isn't great, right? Even you
Mhm.
drinking sodas, like, and then that's where you start to say, then you always get the obvious, I don't know where to start. It all seems overwhelming, right? And that's where you need to go find someone who has a plan or who can help you develop a plan.
It's taking those small steps. I think you hit so much right there as far as motivation, because brain wise, that decision is like a dopamine hit, right? And so that's why people in the new year, they're like, I'm going to make all these changes. And then they do well for a while and they fall off because
Yep.
there's not a dopamine hit anymore, because it has to become routine. And so that idea of how does this help us in the long run? And even as a couple, looking at that and saying, hey, what kind of couple do we want to be in the long run? Do we want to? I didn't even think about the financial aspect, like the health financial aspect of this, but you're exactly right. Hey, do we want to use our money to pay for potential surgeries or whatever that may
Right.
be, medications, right? Or do we want to be invest in this now and use our money for other things later? Also the relationship aspect, the relational aspect of that. So using consequential decision making and thinking about, hey, does this decision get me closer to something that I want in the long run? And it can't just be like oh, it can be, I guess, like I want to fit into that pair of
Yeah,
pants, or
absolutely.
I we tried for a long time in our relationship. My husband smoked, and for a long time as a spouse, I would say, hey, think about the guns you could buy if you gave up smoking. And
All the guns.
even that wasn't enough to get him to quit,
Yeah.
because it was just something that he was used to doing, and it was a habit, and it took a lot to get him to quit smoking.
Yeah. And
And
we try to even, before it even gets that far, right? Before it
mhm,
even gets to the point of where, hey, you could buy all the guns you want. Yeah, it's still not worth that nicotine
mm-mm.
hit. And it's, think about it now. And if you were to ask him now, I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, I was an idiot.
Oh,
Like,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So it's kind of one of those things where, objectively looking at it, just like you talked about the self-assessment, it's
Mhm.
extremely difficult to do, especially as a law enforcement officer, but then even if as a husband or a dad or a wife or whatever the case may be, it's very difficult to self-assess and say, hey, what am I going to do? Because you only get one life, right? So you always want to make the best of it. That's what I always try to tell people is you get one. And so you can do with it what you will. That's your own will. But I always tell people, you always want to try to live your best life. And if you really think about what that means, it requires change most of
Yeah.
the time.
So How do you work with people to change? I know you have an app that you have out, and I know your company. Why don't you talk a little bit about if somebody was interested, how would they work with you, or what's the app do?
Sure.
Wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah. So a lot of so as it pertains to the fitness side, I'll go ahead and start with the fitness side first. So with the fitness side, obviously it's basically just online coaching. We over deliver. That's our thing.
That's an always great idea of over
It's a
delivery.
great thing. And
Yeah.
we also, first and foremost, we give a lot away for free, give a lot of information for free. We have usually a blog written once a month or sometimes twice a month, free workouts, free opt-ins of 22 secrets to night shift, whatever the case may be, uncommon items you should have in your patrol vehicle, just tips written by our team. So it's not me. Some of them are me, but again, we have seven active cops on the team, all different capacities within law enforcement. Some are former military, and they really dive into the weeds there, right? So we give a lot away for free, programs about nutrition, whatever the case. We have physical therapists on the team as well. So they're performance-based physical therapists. So they're not over here teaching grandma how to walk again. They're over here saying, how can we make you perform better on the street? And if you're dealing with injuries, how can we make those areas more resilient?
That's awesome.
Pain-free. So we have an app. Obviously, we deliver workouts. We have rehab programs written by physical therapists for the shoulders, knees, and lower back. Wow. We have nutrition guidelines. We have macro calculators. We have recipe books. We have basically everything you can think of. And probably the biggest thing is you can communicate with one of our coaches or physical therapists at any point in time. You can send them videos of your form. They'll help you correct your form. You can even ask them questions about how should I work out? When should I work out? How can I modify certain things I can't do? We have body weight programs if you don't have access to a gym. We have basically everything covered, right? Because we have such a wide variety of experience on the team. And those that are still active are obviously still bringing in that current information, current data into us. So we're able to then keep elevating our product. And then we obviously go to conferences all the time. We go to the COPS. We just presented at the COPS conference in Dallas. Two of our guys were there. And then obviously we go to all the TOAs, the Tactical Officers Association conferences as much as possible to present there as well. That's on the fitness side. You can sign up online. We do 2 weeks for free. No contract. See if you like it. If you don't like it, feel free to cancel. It's less than $1 a day for all of that I just mentioned. And we've had over 17,000 police officers. Actually, I think it's 18,000 now on the program in the past probably 3.5, 4 years. So
a lot of people you're impacting.
Yeah. And I'm really proud of my team. My team is great. We also donated $1 million in training last year to law enforcement agencies. I believe it was 14 agencies. We basically offered our agency health and wellness program to them free for a year for every single officer. We didn't receive a penny. And it was really cool to see the amount of want of those that applied to receive the program. We had over 350 agencies in 36 hours apply. So it was great to see the want there. So that's how you can do it on that side. And again, our goal is to just be a resource. And for you guys, don't have to think about it. If you have questions, you can ask experts, physical therapists, strength conditioning coaches, nutrition specialists. You can ask them your questions. So because again, if you type in Google, you type in, how do I lose weight? You're going to get a billion things, and it's going to tell you to go take this supplement that probably doesn't even work anyways, because we're a very whole foods based company. Yes, we have supplements, and not we have supplements, but we tell you that, yes, there are some great supplements to take and how to survive and thrive in the profession. And so that's where that goes on that side. But the combative side is something that I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I love the art. I love martial arts. And I think they obviously go hand in hand, right? So to end it, our motto on the fitness side is fitness is the foundation for survival. You build a strong foundation, you're more than likely going to build a strong body.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like too, a lot of what you're talking about is that there's a variety of content where it can be somebody who's just needing to make sure that their body is operating after that injury or after that soreness. I wasn't joking when I said check on my husband, because he's got a shoulder, he's got a back, and he's got a knee. So and so all of those, looking at that, fitness doesn't have to be in the gym an hour and a half a day. it can be incorporated in to somebody's life. And it sounds like you're really working to do that and making it accessible to people.
Yeah. And one thing, I want to add is our approach overall to training this is advice that I would give anybody for anything, is the minimal effective dose. What is the least amount of effort I can put in or work that I can put in to achieve progress? So as it pertains to fitness, yes, you can be in the gym for 3 hours. Is it necessary? The science tells us no. It tells us definitely no. You don't need to be in the gym for an hour. And if you're training for a goal, if you're training to be more prepared for the streets, right, for law enforcement, you don't want to be so sore that you can't move, because then what's the point? If you're trained to be prepared for a foot pursuit, or you're trained to be prepared to drag someone out of a vehicle, but you're too sore that you can't do it, or you're not going to perform at that level, then what's the point of training, right? So we always want to train with purpose. And I think that's where, and if you're just getting started, guys, this is what we specialize in. You're not alone, right? But you got to start. You're going to suck at anything you do new. You're going to suck at every single thing. When
and
I first
that is
started training,
super uncomfortable.
it's super uncomfortable. When I first started training jiu-jitsu, I was 27 years old, and I had a 17-year-old kid whose mom dropped him off at jiu-jitsu, literally just beat me up for 5 minutes. First day. And I was like, I'm a 27-year-old professional police officer, professional. And this 17-year-old kid whose mom dropped him off.
And I just got my ass
class,
kicked.
I just
You're
ass
old.
kicked. And
Right.
Every minute on the minute, it was just submissions. And I was all like, okay, I self-assessed real quick. And said, all right, Adam, this is something you have to do. And fast forward probably 5-6 years now, I haven't stopped. I do it 4 times a week. Now I teach cops for free every Wednesday with Jeff. He's a black belt and a former police officer. And so it's something where I self-assess, and I said, all right, I suck at this. I'm very bad at this whole self-defense thing. The reason why I started is because I had an incident at work where I tried to arrest someone who had a warrant, and they didn't want to be arrested. And my mind went to I had some choice words for myself during the incident, but after I had a debrief, I said, yeah, you knew nothing, Adam. You didn't know this. If this guy really wanted to hurt you, you'd have been in a fight for your life, and it over something that you shouldn't have been. And so now, very capable, even probably after 2 years, I was very capable of controlling another human with no issue, but I had to suck first. And that was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's okay to suck first, but giving yourself permission to do that. So starting all levels, you don't have to be an expert. So being uncomfortable, just go in, start doing the thing. I also, because I know meals are important, and as law enforcement families, first responder families, we don't get to eat together much. And so it sounds like even when you were talking about it at the beginning, that it's important to say, hey, what's something that we can have together? So when we do have that time together, you can figure out as a family or as a couple, what's a meal that works. Chicken and broccoli sounds fantastic for me, but finding something that works. And it sounds like you have those resources there that couples could look to say, hey, let's find a meal that works for all of us, that it doesn't have to be somebody singled out eating their own special food.
Yeah. And you don't have to be Gordon Ramsay. You don't have to be Gordon Ramsay to cook these meals. I was raised cooking. My wife was not, right? So I can cook, but again, we still find a way to crock pots, very effective, very cheap. You can literally throw anything in there with a little bit of salt and pepper and you're good to go. So again, you don't have to overcomplicate. There's so many resources out there, whether it's something with us or something with somebody else. There's so many resources out there that are just, they're at your fingertips, they're on your phone, they're on your laptop, but it does take a little bit of effort to search. Just like you said, sometimes you got to put in the work yourself in order to get the result.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and pass that information along to their officer spouse, or if the officer wanted to get a hold of you to figure out how do I get started, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or the company?
So we have websites. So you can go to effective.fitness. Literally, that's the website. Or you can go to the Combatives website, which is efcombatives.com. And there we obviously have the contact us. You can always go to Instagram and go to effective.fitness training or EF Combatives. You can We check every single DM on those pages. I have people monitoring both of those pages. So if you have any questions regarding the program or regarding training we offer, or you just want some help, you're like, hey, I'm having this issue. Can you guys suggest something to me? Absolutely. We're not here. Again, our goal is to be a resource and to help elevate the standard within law enforcement. If I had to, that's probably the best ways to contact me directly. If you want to contact me, you can go through those channels and then it'll basically get filtered back up to me. So that's probably the best way to get in contact with us and see what we offer. And if you have suggestions or you're looking for something specific, we're not against developing new programs or developing new ways to help improve the profession.
My goodness. Thank you so much
Of course,
for all
thank
that
you.
information. I love that it's all in one place, and I love that it's easily accessible. I love that officers can access the content anytime. I think that is incredibly important because of the weird hours that we all work. So that is just perfect for your audience and helping people to change their lives. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, guys, keep it code 4.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cindy, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.